We began this hour with NBC News Chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles, Miami Herald investigative reporter Ben Weider, and former Assistant U.S. Attorney Mimi Rocah. Ryan, let's start with the documents oversight staffers hope to access today, and where does the investigation head next?
So this is going to be a trove of information that the House Oversight Committee staff, both Republican and Democrat, are going to be able to look through. We obviously know about the birthday book, which they'll be able to actually get and hold on to the actual physical copy of it. But they'll also get access to bank records. They're going to have access to his last will and testament. There's a long list of information within the estate that they had not previously have access to that they're going to be able to look at unredacted and then use that information as part of this long-term investigation. The Epstein estate information is separate from the trove of information that they're still hoping to get from the Department of Justice. The committee has already released some 30,000 documents that the Department of Justice has handed over to them. But there's a lot of people that believe that there's still a lot that the DOJ is sitting on, and that the information that's already been released is not really all that revelatory or all that new. So that's part of the reason why there's still this push for the discharge petition to force the DOJ to take this step. But right now, House Oversight Committee staffers and the Republicans on the committee say that they're still expecting the Department of Justice to cooperate. It's not a matter of if, but when. Anna.
Mimi, we continue to discuss that birthday book because the president's denied that it's his signature on that page that was released, showing a letter that appears to be from him with his signature at the bottom. The president of a society that deals with questioned documents told the Washington Post there is no indication the signature credited to President Trump on that note in Epstein's birthday book, which he denies, is a forgery. You worked at the U.S. Attorney's Office. How credible are forensic handwriting experts? And does it even matter here in the court of public opinion?
So, Anna, I mean, we could get into a battle of the experts, which is, often what happens at a trial where you're trying to prove criminal liability. But here, what I think the bigger picture is, it makes no sense that it's not his signature, first of all. Because there's no question this book is real. We know that now. Nobody else is questioning the authenticity of their so-called cards and signatures. How would it be that one in the entire book, it's over 200 pages, is forged? But even putting that aside, and we can get bogged down on the is it or isn't it, there's really no question still that Trump had a relationship with Epstein, including a relationship close enough that Maxwell wanted to include Trump in this book in some way. Let's put aside the, is it or isn't it? And that he knew that Epstein liked to, that he, interacted, had sex with younger women. I mean, Trump made a statement in an interview back in the early 2000s saying Epstein likes younger women. He recently made a statement about Virginia Giuffre being taken from Mar-a-Lago to Epstein's club. I mean, he didn't say what for, but there's a degree of knowledge here that is so obvious in my mind, inferences you can draw as a prosecutor, and it also explains why they're really not being transparent. I mean, sure, they've released 30,000 documents. They tried to unseal the grand jury. But let's get at the real information here. Release the documents that talk about Trump. Why won't they do that? There's a lot of smoke, and they're acting like there's a fire, and we want to see so the American public can decide for themselves, and the survivors want to see that.
And it's right now the Oversight Committee that has been able to at least pull a few threads in order to get additional material like this birthday book. And Ben, committee chair James Comer says he's now trying to refocus on the victims. Another member called the release of this birthday book a distraction from that work. But listen to how one of those survivors described the birthday book's release to NBC's Hallie Jackson.
I think that all evidence that we can uncover is helpful. And I think that, if anything, this book shows us, like I said, what his personal relationships were like, what the tone was that he had with close friends, and just kind of the general mindset that Epstein and his friends had is really blatant in this birthday book. It really just made me ill when I went through it. It really just solidified to me what the culture of Epstein and his friends were. And it's right there in black and white in this book.
And do other survivors and their families agree with Liz Stein?
I think so. I mean, I think, listen, for survivors, on the one hand, they didn't necessarily ask for the Epstein story to return front and center. It's traumatic for them to, be shopping in the grocery store and come across, tabloids that splash pictures of Epstein on the front covers. So on the one hand, they didn't necessarily ask for this to be returned to the public gaze. But if it's back, they want the justice that they feel they've been denied for decades. They believe that there are more people who should have been penalized for enabling Epstein's behavior, for recruiting women. And remember, Ghislaine Maxwell is the only person who has been prosecuted successfully, who's alive, I should say, who, for Epstein's crimes. But there were a number of other people who enabled his crimes. There were a number of other people who recruited and groomed girls, allegedly. And clearly from the birthday book, we know that there are a whole number of Epstein's friends who were very aware, or seemingly very aware, of the kinds of things that Jeffrey Epstein was doing and the crimes that he was committing. So I think from their perspective, if we're going to have this conversation again, maybe we can get some of the justice that they feel like they've been denied for decades.
Mimi, we had that press conference with abuse survivors 1 week ago today, and we keep hearing from survivors over and over again that they now want all the files released. But given all the politics we're now seeing play out around this, does anyone have the survivors' best interests at heart? How do you see it?
Well, yes. I mean, their voice is so important, and I think they are advocating for themselves now in a way that they were never able to before, because they are a more cohesive group. They've been brought together, and there are advocacy groups, victim advocacy groups like World Without Exploitation, who help bring them to DC, who really look at this purely from a survivor point of view. The Department of Justice should be the ones looking out for the survivors. I mean, that is in the mission of DOJ, at least the DOJ I know. And so the fact that they're not, and they're giving Maxwell a platform and all of that, is disgrace to the mission of DOJ. Ben used a really important word, which is enable. And I do think that's a term we should start using, because it's not just about Trump. It's all the people who enabled this, which is very common in these kind of powerful men sex abuse stories, right? People knew, or they turned a blind eye, or put their head in the sand at best. And those people should be exposed. And DOJ back in the Southern District of Florida under Acosta was an enabler, because they gave Epstein this sweetheart deal. And so the question now is, will DOJ stop being an enabler, and will they let the others, the real enablers, be known, whether that means prosecution or that just means sunlight and exposure that the survivors want. Either way, it's very important. And the term enabler, I think, is critical here.
If somebody's an enabler, is there any criminality attached to that?
There can be. It depends. It's very fact specific. I mean, an enabler can be an accomplice, can be an accessory, can be in a conspiracy, but it's very fact specific. Just knowing enough, just knowing would not expose you to criminal liability. But if you know about something and you help in some way knowingly cover it up or obstruct, there are ways that you can face criminal liability. But I think we can use it in the common language, as Ben did. They enabled this.
So, Ben, the trove of materials now in the committee's hands includes the non-prosecution deal between Epstein and the U.S. Attorney's Office in South Florida. You've been following this leg of the story for years. Was anything new revealed? And why is this sweetheart deal so important?
Well, for starters, I think the birthday book was significant because, for example, just a couple of months ago, just in July, Ghislaine Maxwell was talking to the Department of Justice and saying, I had no knowledge that he was abusing young women. I had no knowledge of what he was doing. Sure, he was surrounded by by younger and younger women, but I didn't know about anything. But she was the one who put together this book. And when you look through the book, there seems to be a number of references that suggest that his friends were certainly aware that he had a predilection for younger women and was abusing younger women. So it's important because it's a counterfactual to what Ghislaine Maxwell said and what the argument that she and others have made in the past. So in that sense, it's significant. I think the bank records are also significant. Those have obviously not been released yet, but we know that financial institutions played a role in helping to enable Epstein's abuse over decades. For example, the massive amounts of cash transactions that he was apparently reportedly taking out each year that should have raised alarm bells at his banks and didn't. So I do think there's still a lot of information that these records will reveal that will be significant. And the non-prosecution agreement is also significant, even though versions of this have been out. I think it's Ghislaine Maxwell has tried to claim that she herself is shielded by the non-prosecution agreement, which the Department of Justice didn't agree with. But there are other people, women who recruited and groomed some of Epstein's victims and other people involved who were part of the non-prosecution agreement. But I think it's fair to reevaluate, should it give them blanket immunity? And is that fair to say that they shouldn't face any consequences because of that agreement?